Hello and welcome to my studio. I'm Jessie and this is the Knit Up and Dye podcast, episode 53, Monster Taming. As always, I'm going to start out with a big list of thanks for everybody who's a new subscriber, an ongoing subscriber, people who commented. You guys are wonderful. Thank you for all of your support, and you just don't know what it means to me to have you here. I have my cheat sheet as usual because, again, I've got a lot of new subscribers. Hello to all of you. Thank you so much for choosing me. Hello and welcome goes out this week to Kim, Elizabeth, Magda's Movies, Carrie, Karen. I'm going to kill this one because I think it's a name, but I think it's broken up. Anne Brand, California, Anne Brand, CA, Ina, Linda, Kelly, Tweedlewitch. I love that name. That's so cute. You guys are wonderful, and thank you for adding me to your day. Special love, as always, goes out to Chris FF, Linda, Leanne, Eve. Eve, I love your new podcast. Keep it up. Donna, David, Betty Ann, Scott and John, Carolyn, Kate, Terry, Mitch, Nancy, and Rachel. Love you guys. Thank you for all of your support. And certainly comment. Ask questions, let me know what you want to see. This is all about you guys, and the whole reason I do this is because of you. And that I love knitting and dyeing yarn. And I have a lot to talk about today, and I'm going to talk a little bit about personal monsters and, well, monsters in general. So, I'm going to start by being a drama llama. I had some personal drama in my life this past week. From the outside, it looks really trivial. From the inside, it's huge. And from the beholder's shoes, you may understand. I lost my hairdresser. I didn't lose her. She didn't die. She's made changes to her business. And when I first found out that she wasn't going to be there for me anymore, I was angry, crushed, disappointed, all those things. And if you have ever fought to establish a relationship with a hairdresser, gone through beauty school dropout pink highlights accidentally, and finally found somebody and been with that person for years, to suddenly not have them really is difficult, in that this is my identity. This is who I am. This is who I'm attached to. And I've worked really hard to find somebody who could bring out who I feel like and make me look like who I feel like I am. It was difficult, like I said. In the end, I completely understand and respect her choices. She is a wonderful stylist, a wonderful person. She's brought nothing but positive into my life. But she was burning herself out. She was working harder, not smarter. She was working ungodly hours, 50, 60 hours a week, and still dedicating herself one whole day of the week to church and family. Not enough when you have little children, not enough when you have a marriage, not enough for anybody. And she's made changes to incorporate a lunch break into her day. How dare she, right? And some self-time, and some family time, and some quiet time. And those boundaries are so important. I can't support her enough. I agree completely with her decision. I don't like it, because I am going to have to go find somebody else. But I get it. And this whole thing has been really good for me, because it made me look at my boundaries and my time allotments and what was stressing me out and what I needed to do to give myself more time, more comfort, more love, more self-love in my life, as well as more time for my family, my friends, better structure my work. Boundaries are very important, and you really need to have them in your life. So, best wishes to Megan. You have my heart, and find boundaries in your own lives, please. Fight your inner monsters. Yeah, I had to really fight my inner monster when I found out, because my inner monster was And when I stopped and I put on her shoes, my inner monster calmed down and realized who the real monster was in my own life, and that I was actually harming my own life. So walk a mile in somebody else's shoes, put boundaries in your life, and keep knitting. What have I been doing to ratchet the monsters? Organization is super, super important. And so in my studio, I've been making changes to organize my tools, organize my workflow, so that I'm more effective and less stressed. And last night, if you were following me on Instagram, you saw a big old pile of needles and my handy dandy label maker. I love this thing. This was a gift from my husband years ago, and I love it. I label everything. Everything has my name, its purpose, or what it is on it. And I sat down and I went through my needle cases, and I reorganized them. This poor needle case was stuffed to the brim. I had tons of needles shoved in the very back pockets. I went through and I labeled the sizes and lengths of all of my needles. I tucked them in there with their original cards. I have post-it notes telling me where the needle is, if in fact it's not in the case here, and put everything in its place, have everything in its place. I went so far as to acquire a second needle case, and one has my bigger circular needles, and one has my smaller, so that I know if I'm looking for anything 7 and under, and if I'm looking for anything 8 and higher, they have their place there in one place. Everything is labeled and has a home. In doing so, I made many discoveries about what I have duplicates of. I have entirely too many size 8 needles, all 40 inches long. Don't know why. I probably acquired them when I was on a shawl knitting kick, and was using 8s in multiple projects, and would have one in one project that I was actively working, and decided to cast something else on, and bought another needle. Why not, right? So finding that I have that many dormant 8s has actually inspired me to cast some stuff on, because you can never have too many projects. You can never have too many projects. Or can you? So again, that harkens to another monster, and everybody has different tolerances for different monsters in their lives. I'm working on a couple pairs of socks simultaneously. Why? Because, number one, I need new socks, and I need to make a lot of socks this year. That's one of my goals. But I have a complicated pattern, and then I have kind of a mindless pattern. And that enables me to choose which project to work on based on my current needs, whether I am looking for a challenge or whether I just need to mindlessly knit for a bit. And having multiple projects like that gives me more variety. It's more fun for me. I don't feel pressured to slog through a pattern that's too complex for me, or avoid it if I'm tired. I can choose something light, or I can choose something aggressive, and I can have fun with it for whatever my needs are at the time. However, if I have multiple projects that are too intense, I find that I start to bog down and I lose my knitting mojo. So it's really important for me, if I'm choosing to have a lot of projects on the needle at once, to have variety in them, to have really light, fluffy fun, and to have those more intense problem solving, puzzling, interesting, intricate kind of things, but not too many of those. That, and I always feel obligated to finish my stuff, or let it camp for exceptionally too long before I decide I'm not going to finish it. But I don't want pressure. This should be fun. So if you're somebody who's been a monogamous knitter, and I'm slowly bringing you over to the dark side, and you're thinking, well, I could probably cast on more than one thing, keep in mind what types of things you're casting on, and cast on something fun. So what have I been doing? Well, let's start with what's been camping. I showed you guys, I think it was last week, my Coexist sock. I only have one complete. I have not cast on the second one yet. mainly because I cast on a new pair of socks that is really a fluffy knit. It's easy, and in the car has been nice easy knitting during my commute. The Coexist socks, like I said, were not great for me on my commute, but I also chose to do the Chinese waitress cast on, which I love. I'm really addicted to the Chinese waitress cast on right now, and recommend it to anybody if you haven't tried it. Go back a couple episodes, I did demo it, and the elasticity of that is phenomenal. But it's a little fiddly. I still don't have it down 100%. It does take longer. It is worth the time, absolutely worth the time. But I need to take the time to sit down and do it. And in a bumpy car ride, that's just not the right time. So I haven't cast that one on yet, and perhaps tonight, I have set aside time tonight to take my dog for a walk. My dogs have a big half-acre that they play in and run around in all day long, but I found that my newest addition to the household really enjoys going on walks, and it's really good for his behavior. It's really good for get me off my knitting butt and get me moving, and I'm trying to incorporate some of those boundaries and self-love and self-care into my life. So if I have time, I'm going to cast on the sock, and I'm going to take a walk for my dog. Also, my pattern designs have been camping. I have goals for this week that I'm really going to attack those and get those out to my test knitters. This past week has been wholly dedicated to one pattern. It is an exclusive pattern. I'll talk to you guys about it in a minute, but all of my energy and effort has gone into that to get that out and available as quickly as possible. And now that I can see how much I can mow down in a week, I'm very excited about knocking out those patterns. They've got minor technical things that need to be handled, and then they're ready to go. It's really about just wrapping my head around it. And I think putting boundaries in place and scheduling work time is really going to help with my productivity and getting those out to you guys. So I'm excited about that. If you haven't already contacted me about being a test knitter, or if you have contacted me and just want to get back on my radar, please send me an email to, and write in the subject line, say, test knitter. I'm going to start a new queue for you guys. There's going to be some added benefits to being a test knitter for me, and I will get everything out to you guys. That having been said, also be sure to check over in my Jessie Knits Designs group on Ravelry. I should have more details about upcoming test knits in there as well, theoretically. It's not there yet, it will be soon. What have I been knitting? I've been knitting. I actually got some knitting done. Oh, first and foremost, in my very large project bag, I love this bag, I have my Venetian Dreams sweater. This is a pattern by Josie Paquin. I love it. I love it. It is a pay-to-play, so that's what I get to show you of the pattern. I've worked Josie's patterns before. I like her style. I like the way she writes her patterns. I like the way they fit. They fit me. If a modification has to be done, they're easy. There's a lot of room to modify these. This particular pattern is an A-line sweater. It has an interesting V collar on it, and it has some lace trim on the arms and on the body. I'm going to show that to you one more time. And I am knitting this in, please have my label, there it is, Menace del Uruguay, the Allegria, I think that's right, I'm probably saying it wrong. Rambla Sur is the color. I bought this on my trip when I visited Maine. I got this at my mother's local yarn store. The colors are cream, a baby blue, sand dune grass green, a brown, a lovely lilac-y purple. I love it. It's beautiful. And the sweater is knitting up just lovely. It is a top down, it is in the round, it is seamless. Let me get this turned around and hold it up for you. I have gotten past where you split off for the arms, and I'm down into the body. And like I said, it's an A-line, so there's an increase happening as you go. Very simple increases. And last night is all the knitting I've done on this in the past, too long to count. I managed to knit from there to there. Not a lot. It is stockinette in the round. It's about 1.5 inches of progress. Every stitch counts, and it just reawoken my love for this. I think it is so beautiful. I'm so excited to work on it again. I really want to get this done for spring. The colors make me happy. Unfortunately, stockinette in the round is, fortunately, stockinette in the round is very calming. It's very sedate. It's very soothing. And if the TV is on and I'm doing this, it's quite possible I'll nod off and poke myself with the needles. I just find that it soothes me right out, and next thing I know, I'm just trying to knit. So I need to be a little bit more awake to work on this, I found. It's wonderful. I do sleep beautifully well after I work on it. This bag, I have to tell you all, I love this bag. Look at the size of this thing. It is not the largest size. I thought it was the largest size. It is offered by Knitting with Attitude. There's her tag right there. This was a gift, and it was the most generous gift ever. She has this fob on here so you can attach your notions case or stitch markers, whatever you have, your keys if you're carrying this as a bag. She has a little progress marker on the zipper pull as a fob. It has a nice handle. It has, the zipper goes beyond the end of the bag so you can open it up all the way. Look at that, boom. It has pockets in there. It has yarn, plenty of room for yarn. I've got like 3 or 4 skeins in here. There's a pocket, a large pocket on one side, 2 smaller pockets on the other. Do you love the Star Trek fabric? I love the Star Trek fabric. This makes my inner nerd sing. I love it. Hop on over if you haven't had a chance and take a look at Knitting with Attitude. I know she's really excited to get back into the sewing studio. This is my friend Donna and her partner, and they make beautiful, beautiful bags. So hop on over, take a look. It's worth your time, I believe it. And if you have big projects, like if you're doing an Afghan, they have a bag even bigger than that one. I love a big bag. I love a big bag. At the same time, I love a small bag, because sometimes you have dainty little projects. And she makes smaller bags too. But that's neither here nor there. What else have I been knitting? I'm so excited about this. This just finished. This went to my tech really, really quick. It's a nice, easy knit, so the tech on it was really simple. I did the photography with my husband on this morning. Thank you, John. You are my favorite photographer ever. And the pattern has been uploaded to Patreon. It is available exclusively to my patrons. If you're interested in the pattern, if you're interested in becoming a patron, $1 a month gives you access to my exclusive content and to these patterns. This pattern will also be available to the general public in a kit. The kit includes the yarn. There will be 2 colored choices. I will have this up very, very soon in my Etsy shop for pre-order. I'm actually testing the second color. It's going to be in the color that I knitted in and in an alternate color that is sunset tones, yellow-based sunset tones. The color is in the other room developing right now, so we're playing with that. But this is my hat, and I'm so excited about it. I showed you a sneak peek of it last week with the baubles, and I've put my palm on it. This is a slouchy hat with a long 3 inches of 1x1 rib before it goes into this wonderful bauble texture. Baubles are easy, you saw that last week, and a palm on top. It slouches beautifully. It is nice and long, so it can hold big bunches of hair if you've got a lot of hair. It can accommodate a bun if you have a bun on top of your head, or it can just show off your attitude if you're at the slopes and you're too cool for school. Either way, this is Let's Get Bubbly. And Let's Get Bubbly is up there. The pattern will be available to the general public come September, but for now it is exclusive. And I loved knitting it. I loved writing that pattern. I had so much fun working that. And I had the pleasure of demonstrating how to make a pom-pom for my husband. And when he saw the device and he saw what you have to do to accomplish a pom-pom, he said, "You really ought to demonstrate that." He's right, and I'm going to. Would you like to see how to make a pom-pom? Let's do it. So there are some wonderful tools you can purchase that'll help you make pom-poms. This is the Clover Large Pom-Pom Set. This set includes 2 pom-pom tools. One will make a 2.5 inch pom-pom. The other will make a 3 3/8 inch pom-pom. This is a diameter measurement, which means it's the measurement across the body of it. This one has been trimmed, so it is under 3 3/8 at this point, but generally that's the whole size prior to trimming. Unfortunately for Clover, their instructions are a little shy on detail. You could muscle through it with the instructions on the packaging, but sometimes seeing it in action really helps with your end result. So I'm going to pop this one out of here, and let's make a pom. The pom-pom maker comes all assembled, but it's actually a number of different parts. There's an arm over here. There is an arm over here. These arms are independent of each other. And the whole thing pops apart. It's a little overwhelming at first when you get this to figure out what exactly needs to happen. However, we're going to go through it. To begin with, what I do is I take my yarn and I make a slip knot. This is a personal preference. It just helps me get established, and it's going to get trimmed off. And I tighten it down with the knot up on the top of the spine so that I can get that trimmed off when I'm done. And you see, this is going around 2 of the arms from one side. And I just start to wrap my yarn around it. It's a little fidgety at first, just to keep those even, but around we go. And I keep knocking it. Around we go. And I do a couple of layers. How much you wrap is how firm the ball is going to be at the end. You don't want your pom-pom to be too sparse, but you don't want it to be a bowling ball either. Forgive me, I have apparently some yarn barf in my ball here. What is going on? There we go. And obviously you can stop at any time in the process and set it down. The worst that's going to happen is a little bit's going to unravel. It's not for naught. And I work back and forth across this just to try and get a nice even layer. When I'm satisfied with the overall volume of yarn that I've put on, I work down to the open end of this device. I then close this down with the yarn up on top and flip this side up and proceed right across uninterrupted. And I do the exact same thing on the second half of the device. Try to be consistent in the tension that you apply the yarn on. If you wrap it too tightly, you're going to end up with a smaller pom-pom, because when you cut to make the outer edge of the pom, it's all going to retract back toward the middle, if it's under tension. Don't be too tight, don't be too loose. Just a nice even wrap on and around. Some people will count the number of wraps that they do so that it's even on both sides. If you're going to try to do a 2-color pom, you're going to want to layer the second color in. Do both at the same time if you want it nice and interdispersed. Otherwise, what can happen is you can end up with just the color on one side and just the other and not get it layered through all the area. Generally, if I'm doing a 2-color, I will hold both yarns together and wrap both yarns at the same time so that I get a nice even intermix of the colors. And when you're all said and done, come around to the far end again and close the device. Now you cut your line. Once my line is cut, I generally give myself a very quick small knot with the beginning tail and the end tail, just so that I have everything nice and organized. Again, I center it up on the outside middle of the device so that it cuts away later, and it's easy for me to trim away so that there's not a knot in my pom-pom. Now it's time to make the pom. Like steeking, cutting your pom is a little bit scary. It's not tied yet. There's nothing securing this together, but you're going to go ahead and cut this. The most terrifying part of this is if the device is not nice and tight and locked together, if for some reason it pops open, which is unlikely, you're going to have lots of little pieces of yarn, and there's not going to be a recovery for it. Generally speaking, I hold the device like a sandwich, nice and tight, while I'm doing the cutting. That prevents this from falling apart. Not that it's likely to happen, but just reassures me that I'm not going to have a big mess to deal with later. Next step is you're just going to cut right up the center. There's a groove here underneath. All the way around, you're going to cut this yarn. In we go. And you can see it blooming out immediately. It does take a little bit of muscle to get through all the layers. Just take your time, snip, snip, snip all the way around. Now I've even cut the line that carried over, and I've cut through the knot at the end with the beginning and end tails. All done. You have this little fuzz ball with a machine attached inside. The next thing you need to do is tie it, secure it. I take a length of yarn long enough to create a knot in the middle of my pom and have at least 6 inches to weave into the actual hat to secure it. More yarn is better than less yarn. Now we tie it off. Again, right down between that groove, a little bit there that I could trim better. Right down between that groove all the way around, you're going to go ahead and nestle this in. Sometimes I use a slip knot to loop this through. A simple overhand is going to work just fine. Make that knot and then tug. And you're going to make sure that this goes down in between those two discs, all the way to the core in the middle where you wrapped. Give it a nice firm tug, but don't snap your yarn. Another overhand knot. Tug all the way down through. It's time to release your pom. I like to pull the wings open first. I find that it just makes it easier to get the two pieces apart. Lift one, lift the other, flip it. Ooh, lift one, lift the other. You have this crazy wingy thing. grab the centers on either side and wiggle it apart. Out comes a palm. I give it a little shake, and now it's just ready for a trim. Look around it. You'll see where some places you didn't catch the middle quite right. Simply going around and eyeballing from a distance and giving a light trim will shape that palm up better so that it's a full globe circle for you. A sphere, as it were. And there you go. This palm is secured. It's not going to fall apart. And I have ends to weave into the top of my hat. That's how to use the Clover Palm Maker to make a pom-pom. When you're all said and done, close your wings back up. The center pin is right there. The hole for the center pin is right there. Simply press them back together and you're ready to make another palm. Hopefully that little tutorial about how to make that pom-pom was useful to you. I know when I first bought the tool, I looked at those instructions and I was kind of lost. I did find another tutorial online. It wasn't a foreign language, but the visual helped. They're easy, they're fun, and they really can add an extra pop to your hat that weights it properly if you're doing a slouch, or it just adds an extra pop of color, and they're fun. They're fun. Oh, what else is on my list? What have I been dyeing? So I'm still playing with multi-process techniques, and I want to show you another one. This one's going to be on skeins of regular fingering weight, where I do 2 processes to get the end result. I do want to remind everybody, I do still have that 3-month sock blank club available. That's available through my shop on Etsy. There's only, I think, 2 spaces left. If you're interested, pop on over, get signed up on that. It is going to shut down. It is going to go away come January 20th. That's my ship date. That's when it starts. So if you're interested, hop over there now. But let's go look at another dye process that's a multi-stage dye process. And let me show you kind of how you can get extra effects by combining different processes. Let's go. As you can see by the mess, I'm all set up and doing some dyeing today. I wanted to take time to show you this multi-process setup. I am using my roasting pan again, and this time I'm going to combine both an end pour technique and my scribble technique. First thing we need to do is the end pour, and the end pour is going to cause a saturated color to come on. But I'm going to be very careful in how I apply that so that only one section of the yarn has that heavy pour on it, and the rest is left blank for the second process. I need to mix up some dye before we begin. Always wear a mask. Alright, my dye is all mixed up. I have my yarn pre-soaking in an acid mixture. What I've put in the pan is 2 skeins of fingering weight yarn. I have 6 cups of water that was preheated and 1 cup of vinegar. It's been sitting now for probably 15 minutes to really take up the water as much as possible. Some days I leave it longer, some days I leave it shorter. As long as the yarn is fully saturated and I can see that it's all wet all the way through, I'm happy with it. I've mixed up my dye, and the dye was in a cup of preheated water, just water in this particular case. The dyes were directly added in and stirred up to make this particular color. Now I'm going to do an end pour just on one end of the yarn, but I'm going to let it bleed at its own rate across the yarn. I'm going to grab the camera and I'm going to tilt it here so that you can see what's happening. So the dye has only been poured into the right-hand side of the pan. It is slowly creeping across toward the left-hand side of the pan. But ultimately, it's going to stay where it is unless I tip that pan. And it's going to leave me a lot of white area to take up in. probably a little bit more white area than I want. I'm going to tip this a little bit to make it about half of the pan with the dark dye and half of the pan with the white area. I'm just nudging the dye really to give it as much character as possible and to leave me with not a huge area to do the scribble dyeing in. I ultimately want this color to be predominant in it. So about 50-50 is what I'm looking for. And I'm just wiggling this around to get that effect with a little bit of tilting. And that bleed is going to give it character. It's going to give it tones to work with. That's what we're looking at right now. I'm going to go ahead and pop this in my oven at 225 degrees Fahrenheit for about 20 minutes. Ultimately, I want this to heat set. There's not a lot of water in here. I'm going to just fill a little bit into my original dye cup and add it in here to lubricate between the pan and the yarn so it doesn't scorch. This also enables me to use up all of the dye mix. In we go. And by the magic of television, we have another one ready for the second process. It's really hot. First thing I want to do is turn this over to get as much of the white area exposed as possible because I want to do my scribble dye technique right on top of this. The underside is likely to have more white than the top side, which in this case it definitely does. I'm going to just grab the camera real quick to show you. Actually, I think I can tilt this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what one side looks like versus the other. This is the top of one, this is the underside of the other. This gives me a lot of space to play. And I'm just going to give that a flip. So now I have a whole canvas to do my scribble dyeing on. I'm choosing a similar color. Not the same color, but something that complements it. You could choose contrast, you could choose anything you want. It's your yarn. Dye it the way you want to dye it. I'm going to mix up a pretty color and I'm going to scribble this all over. See how easy it is to get sidetracked and forget your safety equipment? Always wear a mask. Once the dye is completely dissolved, you're safe to take off your mask. I wear my mask as well when I'm airbrushing because I'm aspirating it into the air. Ultimately, if your dye jar is open or if you've got powder out, have a mask on. These are chemicals. They have warnings for a reason. Don't breathe that. Scribble technique, I use inexpensive condiment bottles. I get these down at my local dollar store. They hold up beautifully. I just add the dye right to them. They do have a tendency to leak, so this is not always the most exacting science. But it's going to dribble and it's going to spill if it leaks at all, and that's just going to add to the character of your scribble dye. Scribble it on. I scribble on to the white area, but I also overlap a little bit into the previously dyed area just to give it continuity so that there's not a harsh break between the two things. Once I've applied this all over, it goes back into the oven to set. I have dye left over. I'm going to manipulate this a couple times and keep scribbling onto the white area until I'm satisfied with the overall look of it. This is a great way to add really interesting changes into your yarn. If you're knitting this yarn up into socks, you're going to have solid areas and then speckled areas, and they're going to spiral around your sock. How much fun is that? Before I pop this into the oven, I just want to give you a quick look. The speckle is really just scribbled on. It's going to be little dashes in your work. Some of it's going to bleed a little bit so it ebbs into a color and back out of the color. Some of it's going to be actual hard lines of color. It's whatever you want it to be. Have fun. Scribble away. So with the multi-process dyeing, you're combining different techniques. You can do a half wall pour and then scribble. You can airbrush on it later. You can do a twist and resist and then add color on top of that. All of these multi-processes just make your yarn, your art more unique. Play with it. Take a couple of different techniques that you're using and combine them and see what happens. You can't imagine the fun you have and get to see all the different things that can develop out of these dyes. I love it. It's so much fun. That particular colorway is called the Monster Under My Bed, and it will be available in my shop in the very near future. It's got to finish off and it's got to wash and dry before I can put it there, but you'll see it there by next week. So that's about all I have for you guys this week. Thank you for joining me again. I hope that my demos are useful to you. The multi-process dyeing is great fun. If you have a couple of techniques down already, try combining them and see what happens. Amazing magic happens in the pot when you start layering different dyes in. One last thank you to my patrons. I love you guys. You have no idea what your support means to me each month. If you're interested, pop on over to my website. Take a look at what that all involves. There is no obligation. I thank you simply for watching each episode. And I'll see you guys next week. Examine your monsters. Determine which ones need to stay and which ones need to go. Bye.